All right, so everyone can see the screen, I hope. So tonight we're going to talk about consistency on the track. I have the normal disclaimer that says if you try anything that I suggest tonight and you don't like what happens or something bad happens, it's your fault, not mine. So just the normal keep the lawyers happy disclaimer. So before we dive in, I'm going to do a poll. So this is, okay, if I can get it started, here we go. So just click any or all of these that you've attended. If you were at Watkins Glen, Summit Point, if you were at the class, you can check all that apply. So I'll give just a second. This is to help me and others understand not only who we have on here, but help us understand how to tailor some of the classroom stuff that we do and event stuff. It'll help me as I go through a little bit. I'm going to give you another like 20 seconds and then I'm going to cut it off. I have some, okay. Bruce, you can't click on the choices. Should be able to. Not sure why. All right, so I'm going to end it and I'm going to share the results. So, so we have a fair number of people here on tonight that were at Watkins Glen, at Summit Point, and on the earlier classes. So that's helpful for me to know that as I go through. So thank you for that. So we're going to see if I can let me close that. All right, so moving on, we're going to talk about consistency. What is it? Why does it matter? And most importantly, how to achieve it. And then we'll go into the Lime Rock turn by turn. So what is consistency on the track? Well, you can think of it as turning at the same point, lap after lap, plus or minus an inch or two. Turning in at the same speed, lap after lap, plus or minus a mile an hour. And I could have picked Apex or some other reference point, but turn in is perhaps the easiest one to understand and to strive for, especially if you're not being consistent, because if you're not consistent at turn in, it's pretty unlikely you're not consistent anyplace else. But perhaps the best description of what consistency is that I've seen is this one, which says if you think of your tires as paintbrushes and you drove 10 laps, the lines you drove would overlap. You couldn't tell lap 10 from lap 2 or 3 or 5 or 1. And the picture and the tracks and the snow here, obviously we're not consistent. So, so if we're consistent, the line is consistent, so is how we use the controls. We'll talk about that. But that's what it is. I guess perhaps more importantly, why is it important? Well, we can't be fast, we can't be safe if we're not consistent. And safety first, one way to think about it is, how am I driving versus my limit? My personal limit, not the car's limit, because I doubt if there's very many people on here tonight who, are capable of driving, right at the car's limit like a pro can. Some of us closer than others, but most of us aspire to do that. We have a personal limit, and we have to kind of have a sense of where are we versus that limit. If you look at the graph, I kind of like driver number 1, which is hard to see with the yellow line, but that driver, kind of approaches their limit and then sneaks up on it, after a few laps, versus driver 2 with the red line, where they're over their limit, below the limit, over the limit. That's a pretty dangerous place to be, because over the limit, over your personal limit enough times and something bad's going to happen. And if anybody read my article in Porsche Forest about Watkins Glen, I described being comfortable on the track, driving on the track, by which I meant, you know, being in a frame of mind where I didn't feel, where I felt like I wasn't doing something that, you know, I didn't want to do. I wasn't hanging on by my fingernails, so to speak. And so driving below one's personal limit in a comfortable way is one way to think about being safe. The other thing about safety and consistency is the following. If I'm consistent at the speed I turn in at and the place I turn in at, and I turn in at a corner and all of a sudden the car feels different or something looks different, then I know immediately something's wrong. Somebody spilled something on the track, you know, something happened to the car. It could be 1,000 things, right? But if the car doesn't feel right, it's not right. But that only works if I'm familiar with what it should feel like, not that, you know, all of a sudden I came into the corner a lot faster than the last lap or something of that sort. So that's the safety part. But how about the fast part? Well, I think everybody on this call knows that we can't get better and faster by just going out and, quote, driving faster. You know, to get better, we have to make a change. We have to try things that would make us faster. Well, that requires a repeatable baseline. Not only a baseline, but a repeatable baseline. So if I'm driving consistently, then I can make a change. I can turn in sooner and see if that helps. I can turn in later and see if that helps. I can brake a little bit. I can carry the brakes a little bit further into the corner and see if that helps. And so we can't go faster without the consistency part. So given that, how do we improve it? Well, this is the meat of what I'm going to talk about tonight, and really 4 areas I'm going to go through quickly and then putting it all together. So first, awareness. You know, we can't be consistent until we pay real attention to all of the reference points on the track. Sort of, am I hitting my marks every lap? And we can use indexing to measure that. And I hope everybody here knows what indexing means. But, you know, at Lime Rock, there's I think it's a fence post or something not too far past the end of the track out curbing on the front straight. I always glance at my tack when I go past that to, you know, tell me how well I did in the downhill. And the same's true pretty much on every corner. You know, glance at whether it's your tack or your speedometer, whichever is easier. You know, now if you're running data, you can look at data after a session, but, you know, indexing you can look at every lap. And focus means, you know, for every run, pick 1 or 2 things to focus on, whether it's a specific corner, a specific technique, and really zoom in on that. And I'll say more about that in a minute. And just a quick reminder, this is from the Summit Point list, but if you're trying to get better on a particular corner, the priority is always, always, always exit speed. And the reference points that apply there, and I apologize for the acronyms, but, you know, wide open throttle, throttle application point, end of braking. Now those seem backwards because they happen in the reverse of that, right? We come off the brakes, we get on the gas, we eventually get our foot on the floor. But, you know, you have to, if you're trying to learn a corner or improve on a corner, the first thing to do would be to see, can I get on my foot on the floor sooner? So I might turn in a little bit later, apex a little bit later, and try to get my foot on the floor sooner than I was before. And then, I might try to get on the gas a little bit sooner than I was before. And to make that happen, I'd have to end my braking a little bit sooner. So that's one way to think about how to work on exit speed. After that's figured out, and only after that, can we worry about how much speed can we carry up to the end of braking. And the last and least important part of going fast and being, as well as it plays into being safe, is how late can I brake? Braking late is not a place to pick up speed for most of us. Now, reference points are a big deal in consistency, and you've heard me already mention a bunch of them. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but these are just some examples, the common ones: beginning of braking, turn in, brake release. But in fact, there's lots of reference points, and if you're going to be consistent, you should have, in any given corner, a lot of reference points, not just the common ones. But maybe there's a dark spot on the pavement that you want to put the left front tire on every time halfway between the turn-in point and the apex. Or, it could be lots of things. It could be a seam. It could be, anything like that that we want to use as a reference point. And if we're not being consistent, the single biggest improvement any of us can make is to find more reference points. Add reference points. If we're being consistent, then probably we already have enough. But if we're not being consistent, add some reference points. And these are physical ones. There's also, and we'll say more about this on the next slide, but it's not a physical reference point. But if we turn in, with a little bit of trail brake, which most corners, even at Lime Rock, we're going to have some. How much brake are we going to be on a 1 to 10 scale? Are we being consistent? If we're going to brush the brakes for the uphill, which I'll talk about later, we want to brush the brakes. Well, how much are we going to still be on the brake at turn-in? Well, the answer is probably 1 on the uphill. And that needs to be consistent. Similarly, how much gas are we on at the apex or track out? How fast or slow are we moving the hands? Most of you have heard fast corner, slow hands, slow corner, fast hands. And, Lime Rock, like all tracks, how fast we move our hands is a big deal. Again, a way to think about how consistent we are with those kinds of things. And that relates to controls. And so this kind of overlaps. But if you think about your brakes, how sensitive is my right foot on the brakes? When I brake for Big Bend, am I always at a 9 or a 9.5, just short of into the ABS? If I'm brushing for the uphill, just a 2 or a 3, again, steering, string theory, connecting hands and brakes, the egg under the foot on the gas pedal, and the seat of the pants. And this is one that's harder to learn on the track. And so if your sense of what the car feels like, isn't as well developed as you'd like, then, that's a place where you need to get more skid pad or autocross or some kind of experience to feel what the car is doing in the seat of the pants. And last but not least, vision. And there's some basics. You've all heard this before. Look ahead, look around the corners. This means you've thought about the track. You have a picture in your head of what it looks like. And while you can't physically see around the corner, you know what it should look like. And you're picking up the reference points with your peripheral vision. You've got your eyes focused on where you want the car to go. And that applies especially in an emergency situation, but it applies equally on the track. And
Hey, Bill, we have a question before we get off the slide about. Can you elaborate a little bit about try to see something new on each lap?
sure, I can. That let me make one point and then I'll answer that. Well, actually,
Thank you.
so that comes from a Ross Bentley suggestion. He talks about sensory input sessions where you want to focus on in a session, for example, on vision, to stay with this example, which is where this comes from. And that's a way to force yourself to look around and see things that you haven't seen before. And so you wouldn't do this on when you were trying something else, but if you were trying to improve what you see on the track, improve the amount of detail you can pick up, you would take a session and you would focus on just vision, and you would literally on every lap look for something you haven't seen before. It could be a white line that wiggles that you hadn't noticed before. It could be a tire mark on a white line. It could be that there's an access road that you've never noticed before. It could be orange on the blue Armco at Watkins Glen that many people never see, even though there's this bright orange. So it's really a sort of a I was going to say a crutch, but a suggestion that you focus on where you're looking and try to find something new. And it's
maybe like taking in more reference points. And I see you. I think I may have jumped the gun where you're suggesting that there's a how to see better YouTube video.
Yeah, well, that's you're not jumping the gun. So the question's a good one, and I cannot emphasize sensory input sessions enough. And those of you that have read Ross Bentley or have one of his books, he almost always emphasizes that. But that is the vision part. That's one of the kind of vision parts of his sensory input. And same thing, sun and shadows, right? Lime Rock, this is perfect because those of you that have driven Lime Rock, that as the day goes along, the back part, no name straight, and after the uphill, those sections, even the downhill, those sections, the amount of sun and shadow changes dramatically over the course of the day. And it really will catch you out if you're not paying attention, because if you're used to it being a bright sun, an hour and a half ago, and now you go out and all of a sudden there's a shadow, it makes a difference. Same thing on track surface, things to look for. Now, the how to see better thing is a vision talk that I did back in April, and it's on NNJR's YouTube channel. The video isn't as good as I'd like, and one of these days I need to update it. But there is a whole lot more on how to think about vision on track that will also help you on the street in that video that I don't have time to go through tonight. But these are some of the basics. Hopefully I answered the question. Okay, so with that in mind, how do we put all this together? Many of you have heard this before, so I apologize, but there's a reason why I'm emphasizing this, because this is a way for any or all of us to take the kinds of things we were just talking about and apply it when we're on the track. So if we're thinking about the track, we just talked about reference points, track surfaces, safety features like runoffs. Those are things we need to learn. We need to pay attention to how we use the brakes, how we use the gas, how we use the steering. At the same time, we got to pay attention to traffic and runoff and other, what would I do if? And, the sensory input sessions we were just talking about, vision, hearing, and kinesthetics, which is the seat of the pants. So for the handful of people on this call who haven't heard this before, let me quickly say that there's a whole lot of science here that applies to, well, that basically in a nutshell says how we practice, or in our case, how we drive, what we focus on, is a lot more important than the amount. So while we all talk about seat time, seat time, seat time, in fact, seat time just driving around, you're not necessarily going to get better. But if you apply some of these techniques, you know, you're definitely going to get better. And so let me see if I can have another poll here, if I can find it. Let me see if I can find it. Well, it was here earlier. Okay, so oops. Okay, I want to close that one. It wants to, doesn't want to launch my second poll here. I don't know why. All right, well, I guess, oh, here we go. All right, so I just launched a poll that, again, you can check all that apply. You know, things that you've downloaded from the NNJR website, the track map from Watkins Glen, the deliberate practice worksheets from Watkins Glen, the Summit Point track map, and so on. And while you're doing the poll, if you'll bear with me, I'm going to read parts of an email I got from Dan McCauley, and I'm reading this with his permission. He wrote this right after the recent Porsche Forest came out, and he thanked me for the article in it and talked about his experience at Watkins Glen. He said it was his first event since Lightning of last year, and so he was on the Zoom call in advance, and he found it helpful, and he printed out copies of the worksheets for use at the track. He says, in the middle of his first run on Friday, it became evident I was experiencing a learning plateau, and I felt I needed to talk my way through parts of the course like the bus stop, turn 6, and others. And he lacked consistency from lap to lap. And he felt like his driving had significantly degraded since he'd been to Watkins Glen in September of last year. And in the first session, his rear tires got overheated and slippery, and he came in early. He said, I bled my tires and sulked in the garage for 5 minutes until my buddy came in. And I spent the rest of the day, Friday and Saturday, trying to be consistent by mentally referencing beginning of braking and indexing exit speeds at turn 1, the bus stop, and turn 6. But the worksheets remained safe and untouched in my track box in the garage. And the results were far from consistent. Sunday morning in the shower, I had an Einstein's definition of insanity moment of clarity. I made reference, when I came in, I made reference point notes for beginning of braking, turn in, into braking, and many more for turn 1 and the bus stop. And he makes a comment, in parentheses, how'd they get that thick white line painted driver's left overnight? What else had I not noticed? And he made those notes after each of his 3 runs on Sunday morning. Wow, I found the exercise focusing on a couple of turns, writing out the reference points, provided a map for me to follow lap after lap, which put me indirectly in a mental state for better consistency over the rest of the track. For me, there's no substitute in doing the work. So I mention that because it just emphasizes my own experience, if you read what I put in Porsche Forest, that this stuff works. So I'm glad to see many of you have downloaded the stuff. So, on the website are track maps. for all of our tracks. So I hope everyone either has or will print out a bunch of Lime Rock track maps and print out the document that you see here, which is the topics for using, the maps. And these are the same topics that were on the sheets for Watkins Glen. They're just not, printed on the track maps. So,
Hey, Bill.
yeah.
We have a question from Lou.
Yep.
And it's pretty much germane to reference points, track maps, etc. Bill, can you talk about the track walk and what stood out to you when you walked Lime Rock? And I'll leave that to you to fit it into the presentation at the point you see fit.
Great. I will do that, but I'll do that in the turn by turn. And so Lou, if I don't remember to comment on that, when I get to, for example, the uphill and the downhill and so on, I will remind me. But yes, I will definitely do that. Here, I want to just emphasize, hopefully everyone has these tools available and uses them. And the last point I want to make about this is it's really important, and Dan emphasized this or said this in his email, the first thing to do when you come in from a session is pull out the track map, write down in the first few minutes, what you saw, heard, and felt. What did you do well? What did you conclude? And it's not the question of how fast did you go or any of that kind of stuff. Just, what are the reference points? If you had an objective to do, to focus on a particular turn, really zoom in on, your notes on that turn. And it's really important to do this before you do anything else. Before you look at lap times, before you look at data, before you visit with other people. I do this, the first thing I do when I come in usually is take tire pressures, and then I go write down my notes. And, and your buddies may think you're being antisocial, but this is exactly how it's done. And this is exactly what pros do, right? This is not rocket science. This comes from exactly how the pros do it. So a summary of what we've talked about on consistency, focus on a given session, on a corner or technique, use indexing, be very precise with your reference points, be smooth with the controls, look ahead, but use those worksheets. And keep your frame of mind, this is really important, keep the frame of mind on learning, not on going fast. And that will keep you safe. And in the end, you'll end up going faster. So, so that's how we achieve consistency on the track. So questions before we dive into turn by turn. And I'll remind you, you can unmute yourself or type in a question either way you like. All right, everybody's got it. Okay. All right, so turn by turn. So I'm going to be broken record, print several of these out for your notes. This is in the track pack, just a reminder about the passing zones. The passing zones, with one exception, are mandatory as to which side that you pass on, and it's all right side. So it's pretty easy at Lime Rock. And in fact, if you're going to send a car around, between Big Bend and the left-hander, right side usually works better there too. So, think about doing passes at Lime Rock. Give the pass signals on the right. Oops. Somewhat. All right. Why is that not working? All right. Okay. So, approaching Big Bend. I think everybody here knows or should know that Big Bend is a decreasing radius 180-degree turn. And it doesn't necessarily from the map or, when you first see it, seem like it's decreasing radius because it's a bit subtle, but it is decreasing radius, and that completely dictates how we drive it. As compared to those of you who were at Summit Point, turns 1 and 2 at Summit Point are similar in that it's 180 degrees, but it's increasing radius. So there we had to brake, slow down, get the car turned at 1 and then get back on the gas. This is the reverse. So we want to extend the straightaway as far as we can into turn 1, the first half of Big Bend here, since we have to slow down in the second half. So there's no sense in trying to accelerate out of the first half. Now, there's a couple of approaches. Well, there's many approaches to getting into Big Bend. The two primary ones I'm going to mention here, the one I like to use, or at least I'm most comfortable with, is starting at 5 or 4 and turning the car ever so slightly, but aim it at the apex that you see on the slide here, and then brake. And so we're braking in a straight line across the track, if you will, and we'll come off the brakes, right after that apex probably. But it makes it easy to brake in a straight line and to carry speed into the first half of Big Bend. The line that the resident pro at Lime Rock likes better is to go down, is to brake wherever you need to brake and turn in at the 2 mark and carry a bunch of speed, because he claims that carries a little bit more speed through Big Bend. If you use the line here, shown here, you do have to make a small steering adjustment in the middle of Big Bend. But for most people in most modern cars, that's not a big deal. If you were driving an old 911 or 356, then none of this advice applies, but I don't think anybody here is doing that. So we want to aim for that concrete curb that's past the bridge. You can see it better in this picture, just behind the car in front here. Now, it's really a couple of things here, and this, Lou, I'll comment on the track walk from here in a second. First thing, though, I want to emphasize, we're at that first apex in Big Bend here. The turn 2 is a long, long ways around. And so we need to get the eyes, we need to have the head turned a long ways here. And we need to be looking all the way over to turn 2 at this point. And it's very easy to not get focused where we want to go. The reason why, and this is where the track walk really is helpful. We use about the right-hand half of the track here, perhaps a touch more than that. And the reason we do that is the track is crowned here like it is in other places. And so there's more camber, more favorable banking on the inside half of Big Bend than there is on the outside half. So there's no reason that we ever want to be on the outside half, really, a Big Bend. We always want to be on the inside half here. And if that weren't the case, if this corner were banked all the way out, we would drive it totally different. But it's not, so we have to use half or 2/3 of the track, no more than that. Now, turn 2 is harder than it looks. It's very easy to get sucked into being early here, or to get sucked into getting on too much gas too soon. The nice thing is that the transition from turn 1 to turn 2 is a great place to throttle steer a car. So if you're good with throttle steer, it's a perfect place to apply it. And I find it fantastic when I drive it right, because I can get my line nailed exactly the way I want it, by just, using a little more, a little less of the gas pedal. But turn 2 is slower than turn 1, so we have to set it up. It wants to invite us in to be early, and if you're early here, I guarantee you run out of track, and it's ugly if you don't just drive it off. So be aware here. If you do find yourself early and running out of track, drive the car off. I've had to see too many cars hit the tire wall on the inside here, so it's no place to try to hold the car on. As we track out in the latter part of the curbing coming out, we want to get the eyes up, and the perfect target here is the men's room, building, which is right in front of us. So just that's where we want to aim the car as we exit turn 2. And you'll see many different lines going into the left-hander approaching it. I like a line that's a car width or a little more in from the right side. Some people will go all the way track right here. I've actually experimented not going track right at all here, staying track left, and it's not that bad. It's not that different. I think it's a little quicker and easier to be, mid-track or a little bit to the right. But this is a throwaway. The left-hander is a total throwaway to set up the right-hander that comes after it. The only thing that matters here is to have the car straight at where this, where the arrow here that says want the car straight and track left. That's where the eyes should be. That's where we want to be focused. And as the caution says here, it's very easy to get in early or to get on too much gas too soon, in which case now we'll push the car to the right and we won't be able to set up the right-hander that follows. But the nice thing about the left-hander, there is a reasonable amount of banking in it, and we can carry not a ton of speed, but we can carry some speed into it and use that to trail brake the car to get it turned, and then pick up some gas, and we can actually accelerate briefly, between once we get the car pointed where we want it, and getting set up for the right-hander. So while it's a throwaway turn, there's a lot going on here that it may not be obvious at first glance.
Bill, if you get that left-hander right, can you be flat on the throttle through this right-hander? Or no, you still have to breathe off?
I think you have to breathe off. Matt Muller says he can be flat through here in his Boxster. I'm surprised he can get the car to turn flat. So in general, I think the answer is no, Lou. To me, certainly we don't want to brake for the right-hander, but most cars are going to require a lift to help the car turn, because this is a reasonably sharp turn, and while there's banking down in by the apex, there's not a lot of banking help at turn in at this point, and it's really important to get the car all the way in, pretty close to the apex here. So I don't recommend trying it without a lift. You can accelerate hard out of the left-hander up to the lift, and as soon as you see that the car has made the apex, you can be back hard on the gas. But I wouldn't recommend, especially in a more powerful car. I imagine a Miata can do it without a lift, but I'm not sure about anything more powerful than that. Okay, so note the apex curb here. It's a little hard to see in the picture, but this is a pretty stout curb, and like most of the curbs at Lime Rock, it's not very friendly if you hit it. And in fact, I hit it, a little harder than I wanted to one time and nearly spun the car. So, so we want to be close to it because there's all this banking down here, but it's not a curb that we can run up on, at least in most cars. So I don't recommend you hit it, but I do recommend you get as close as you can. Lots of nice banking, right here, but the caution, whoops, I guess I don't have it. I got to go back. The caution is that about up in, below where just past the apex, about where the second car is, the distant car is in this picture, the road goes off camber. The road is crowned here, just like Big Bend. And so just when you'd like a little more banking approaching track out, the road goes the other way. So we go from positive, 4 degrees of helpful banking to 4 degrees of unhelpful banking. And the difference in grip is about 15% by my math. So if you're hanging on headed to track out, this is not good. So so make sure you're able to unwind comfortably headed to track out here. I see,
Bill,
Mike Lucas is asking about, would I do it different in a 4-wheel drive car? I think the short answer is no. The earlier 4-wheel drive cars like to understeer, so they might like a slightly later turn in and apex. The later ones, don't have very much of that phenomenon, but it would be a subtle in the newer cars. In my experience, it'd be a minor adjustment, I think. If there's something specific to that, jump in. Yeah, go ahead.
What turn is this?
This is the right-hander onto no name. We generally don't use turn numbers at Lime Rock, although this would be turn 4. They tend to get referred to as names, but this is the right-hander onto no name straight.
Thank you.
And arguably one of the more important corners on the track, and not the easiest corner in the world to drive for sure. Okay, now we leave what are called the S's, the Big Bend and turns 3 and 4, and now we're to the fast corners on the track. So the following 3 corners, 5, 6, and 7, if you want to do numbers, uphill, west bend, downhill, if you want the names, these are all fast corners. They're Watkins Glen type corners in terms of speed. And by the way, in terms of risk, because just like Watkins Glen, there's lots of Armco here that isn't very far at all from the track. So since these are fast corners, a common mistake people make is to brake too late and trail brake too much. So we want to do 90% of whatever braking we're going to do in a straight line on the straight here, not in the not on a trail, not trail braking. And so in most cars, now every car is different, and the amount of trail brake your car needs is different than mine. So but in most cars, by the time you turn in for the uphill, you'll be wanting to be on like a 1 brake force. In other words, you'll be turning in and almost immediately be coming off the brake smoothly, so that you can pick up the gas. And the other thing, remember I said earlier, fast corner, slow hands. This is one of those corners where as we turn in, we want to kind of wind the car in and almost think about, especially on the uphill, since the hill catches the car, we can actually, as the car hits the hill, we can actually turn the car more, and the car will take that steering input where it wouldn't if it were a flat corner. So, you know, off the brakes right after turn in, the apex here, and we can be feeding gas on and steering input at the same time. Now there is a second line through the uphill, which I don't teach, and I haven't really driven enough to be comfortable with because it's kind of spooky to me. But I know, Lou, you've driven it and other people have. And that line is to, instead of taking sort of the classic line that are shown here, is to stay track left much, much longer and make a sharp right-hand turn at track left and then go straight up over the hill. Do it, taking more advantage of the hill to help the car turn. But that leaves very little margin left, so I'm not crazy about it. On the other hand, even this classic line requires that you be very careful going over the hill, because this is a very steep hill, and there's a reason that there's a chicane off to the right here, because all the fast race car, none of the fast race cars run this hill, because, you know, go back to the track walk, it's a pretty steep transition when you go over that hill, and it's way too abrupt for a fast car. So almost any car, it needs to be straight, and if you have very much horsepower, you probably have to breathe the car. Or you can be brave like Sam Posey when he used to drive this in some of the early Can-Am cars. He would, when the car went light going over the hill, he would shift from third to fourth, while the car was in the air. But I don't think any of us want to try that. But this is a challenging turn, make no but much faster than you might think. So deserves lots of respect, lots of fun. West Bend, on the other hand, is a very classic kind of right-hand, turn where you have the hill and all that in the uphill. Here, pretty much a flat corner, not much banking help, but still a very fast corner. You want to stay all the way track left, give yourself as much real estate as possible. The apex, this is a place, there's a road on the right here. I don't know whether people have noticed it before, but if the big rigs that come into the track that can't go over the bridge come across the track here and use that road down to the infield. So the apex is that road. And like many fast corners, the apex here is not a point. It's 10 or 15 or 20 feet that we want to run along that apex. And so the road is a good reference here. And we certainly want the eyes up, looking down track at the bridge as we get into this corner. There you can see the road better at the apex. Here's the bridge, and as we go down the hill under the bridge, we want to stay left, especially at the bottom of the hill. The trick here is follow the white line down the hill. I can't tell you how many drivers I see, that come down the hill and cheat on this turn in. They're already a foot or two, inside of the left edge of the track at the time that they turn in. This is not a place, to crab or cheat on the turn in. Stay all the way left. You'll know when it's time to turn because you'll feel the compression in the front end. You'll feel the car go from the hill to the flat, and that's your signal to turn the car in. And again, this is slow hands. It's a fast corner, and get the eyes way up. But slow hands, no place to be early. Since it's a fast corner, you're going fast. It'd be very easy to crank the wheel and apex way too early here. So not a good idea. Slow hands on this one. eyes up, and again, a relatively long apex. You get the eyes looking way down track at track out. So just quick summary before I take questions. You can trail brake into big bend and the left-hander as much as you like. Not very much trail brake for the other corners. Be really aware of the camber, exiting no name. Oh, the downhill, same thing. As you get to the middle of the track, headed to track out, track goes off camber the wrong way, and in big bend. And obviously look for reference points that aren't cones. I assume the Chiefs will probably pull cones in at some point, like we did at Summit Point. So, so questions. Let me stop there and see what people have questions about. Piece of cake, right?
Bill, has the track pack been released yet?
Yes, the track pack came out Friday, I think it was.
Where is it?
It came in the
Where's it
email.
posted?
Yeah, there's an email link. It should be on the website. Let me.
I don't see it on the website.
Okay, so let me just look while we're talking. Whether it was uploaded to the website or not, I didn't look. The link worked in the email, so if it's there, I'll show you where it is.
Bill, only 2019 Lime Rock track back is on the website.
Okay, so maybe, all right, let me just, okay, so you're right. Okay, it's not there. So I'll tell you what, after this call, I will post it on the website. Perhaps Tom didn't, thought he got it up there and didn't or whatever, but yeah, I see that it's not there. Oh, and I just, Lou's question about track walk reminds me. The one thing I didn't mention on the downhill, I mentioned that the uphill that transition's very steep. The downhill is also very steep, and the right-hand turn that's a downhill is not nearly as sharp as it seems when you're driving. Much more, it's much more open than one might think. Doesn't seem like that when you're coming down the hill, but it is there. And if you look at the chat, Bruce, thank you, Bruce. Bruce just posted a link in the chat to the track pack. So if anyone is looking for the track pack, it's there's a link, but I will put it on the website.
Bruce, Bill, it's Kurt Barcy. What we did at Summit Point, which I thought was very good, was that half hour where it was under a yellow flag. Everybody could go out, get your car warmed up, look at the track, look at the flag stations, get your mind set for the thing. I think it's something that should be considered to do at every event. We're giving up 2 minutes to 3 minutes per session for the whole day, but I think it really saves on a lot of safety stuff, and it just gets everybody looking at the track again. What is the Chiefs' thought about that?
I personally think it's pretty helpful, especially for tracks that drivers aren't familiar with, which was obviously the case at Summit Point. I guess when Tom put the schedule together for Lime Rock, he was assuming people knew the track, so he didn't do that. But I mean, the thing we did at Watkins Glen, which was slightly different, we did the first several laps under yellow with a pace car, right? So that same kind of idea. done slightly different. And so, I'll mention that to, I think the chiefs for Lime Rock are Craig and Mike Carr. So I'll mention that to them.
It might be sort of a thing that, I mean, everybody else that's on the, tonight looking at it, I mean, what do you guys think? I mean, it might be something, Bill, that you could go out to everybody that's in DE and see what they think, because I've run a lot of events with Chin Track Days down in Florida, and they do this every event, no matter how much experience you have. It's under yellow, it's for a half hour. It just gets your mind going into the flow of the track again. And it, so I mean, it's just something to think about.
No, I agree. It worked very well there. I appreciated it since I hadn't been there in a long time. So, yeah, no, I will pass that along.
It could be done. It could be done for each of the group. You could do 5 laps under yellow the first time out, and you wouldn't have to change the schedule.
Yeah, that's what we did at Watkins, and it worked well.
Yeah,
Right. I agree.
Yep. Yeah, and
Because
that,
the problem is with 1 lap under yellow, there's 30 cars sometimes that are big events, 30, 35 cars in one group. 8 cars get under 1 lap, and then it goes to green, and these poor guys are coming on there and said, shit, I'm under green already. I didn't even got to run.
no, I completely agree, Curtis. I'm, as many of you know, I'm a big believer in slowly working your way up, warming, it's nice to warm the car up and everything, but it's really more important to warm the driver up and
Right.
to get the head and everything else going. And the driving schools, at least the ones I'm familiar with, generally, want to see kind of a slow, steady progression up to pace, not all at once, because if you're a pro driver, you're expected to go out of the pits and be right up to pace, but the rest of us, not so much.
Seems like what we're running against is we've always done it this way. Sort of.
Yeah, well, and when we run instructed events, it's really, the schedule ends up very compressed, but in these advanced
Absolutely.
events, we have more flexibility with the schedule. So
Absolutely.
that's good.
Thank you.
Okay, good.
Well, I would also offer that you determine your own pace. If if that's something that someone desires, that they can flag people by, they can go out late, run their own pace, or for a couple laps and take in what they want, and others that want to go out and go fast in that group and feel more comfortable can also do that.
Yep. No, that's right. And I encourage everyone to warm up at your own pace. And I always take at least a couple of laps to warm up, and I end up giving a lot of pass signals, to Curtis's point, because some number of people seem to want to go fast right away. But regardless, you can do it. But the several laps under yellow so that no one feels pressure, is a good thing. So I will pass that along.
Cool down laps are also awesome to once you get that, you pass that checker, make use of that last lap while you're out there cooling down, right? Use that to pick up extra reference points.
Yep.
But you don't have to go at 50 miles an hour to do the cool down lap either.
Not that anybody would do that, but yeah, I get it.
Well, they do. They slow down so much. You said, "Oh my God!" It's it's a cool down lap. It's not a go slow lap.
Yep. Bruce, did you have a question?
It was more of a statement. I picked up in the track pack that might have been overlooked is that Lime Rock apparently is requiring long sleeves, even here in August. So that may be overlooked by many people.
Yeah, it was pointed out in the email as well. I had to shake my head when I saw it.
Yeah, we haven't been there in warm weather in a long time, and so yeah, that good reminder, Bruce, because I know I've got to pack some long sleeve shirts that I probably wouldn't otherwise pack. So, yeah. Lime Rock and VIR have that rule for reasons I don't understand, but they don't ask us for input on stuff like that. So we'll, if it's going to be, I think Wednesday, if the forecast holds, will be pretty nice. Thursday could be pretty steamy. So, yeah, but yes, be prepared. Other questions, comments? All right, well then I will get the track pack on the website shortly, and I will also put on Facebook, on the NNJR Facebook group a little bit later, the trailer directions for Lime Rock that I use. Well, the two main options I'm familiar with, and James, if you send me yours, I'll add that to it as well. But otherwise, I hope to see all of you at Lime Rock. Have a safe trip up, and it promises to be a great 2 days. So we're looking forward to it.
Looking
Thanks,
forward
Bill.
to it, Bill. Thank
Bill,
you.
thanks.
Thank you, Bill.
Thanks.
And
Good night, all.
somebody did drop the link to the track pack
Thank you,
in
Bill.
in the
Appreciate
chat, so that's there.
I'll send you.
Thank you, Bill.
Thanks, Bill.